Imagine being so powerful that you could order the destruction of an entire world and feel absolutely nothing. That's Commander Vorath watching from the bridge of his warship as cities below are turned to ash. This was the 47th planet his fleet had crushed in the last century alone, and honestly, he stopped counting the bodies a long time ago. His second-in-command reports, "Sir, all resistance is gone. The population is rounded up and ready for the slave ships." Vorath turns, the planetary fire reflecting in his cold yellow eyes. "How many?" he growls. "About 4 billion, sir. Perfect for the mines." A twisted smile creeps across Vorath's face. For nearly 5,000 years, the Vorax Empire has been the galaxy's worst nightmare. They've conquered over 300 species. Some are enslaved, others are just gone. No one even dares to fight back anymore. The Vorax aren't the biggest or the oldest, but they are the most brutal. Their entire culture is built on one simple rule: the strong take whatever they want, and the weak serve them or die. As Vorath walks through his ship, soldiers snap to attention while slaves from a dozen broken worlds dive out of his way, their eyes glued to the floor. Fear was his constant companion, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Back in his private chambers, Vorath looks at a holographic map of the galaxy. The Vorax territory is a giant, angry red stain that has swallowed almost everything. The few unconquered spots are just useless, dead rocks. His eyes drift to a small yellow star in a forgotten corner of space, marked with an ancient quarantine symbol. He's seen it his whole life, but never thought twice about it. The old stories said the locals were wiped out by a solar flare thousands of years ago. The planet was a dead rock, nothing to see there. He dismisses the map and pours himself a drink, ready to start processing his 4 billion new slaves tomorrow. But 12,000 light-years away, a young alien named Kira is hiding in a dusty old archive. She's a Mallory, a small, gentle species with silver skin and big, dark eyes. The Vorax conquered her people 300 years ago, turning them into laborers and servants. But Kira is different. While her people accepted their fate, Kira spends every free moment digging through ancient records, searching for a spark of hope. The Vorax let slaves work in archives. They never imagined one might be looking for a weapon. Tonight, Kira is sorting through data crystals from a civilization the Vorax destroyed 2,000 years ago, records kept as forgotten trophies. Most of it is boring: shipping lists, crop reports, poetry in a dead language. But one crystal is different. When she slides it into the reader, it doesn't show words. It shows a star chart from 6,000 years ago, from a time before the Vorax terror began. It's a graveyard of civilizations that are now just dust. But a tiny marker catches her eye, a little yellow star on the galaxy's edge, labeled in a language she's never seen. Kira runs it through a translator, and the words that appear on screen make her heart pound. "Warning, do not approach. The sleeping ones rest here. They will wake when the time is right. Do not disturb their slumber, for they are not like us." It continued. They are something more. The sleeping ones. Kira had never heard the name. She dives back into the archives and finds whispers of them in the oldest files, legends from long-dead species about a young race from a small blue world, a people who created wonders and then, one day, just disappeared. Some myths called them monsters. Others called them saviors. But every story agreed on one thing: they chose to go to sleep, and they promised to one day wake up. Kira looks at the chart again. That yellow star. It's in the exact same spot the Vorax have labeled as a quarantined dead zone. What if the Vorax are wrong? She copies the file to a hidden drive and erases her tracks. This is beyond dangerous. If she's caught, she's dead. But for the first time in her life, Kira feels something she thought was long gone: hope. Meanwhile, the planet Earth spins in the silent dark, a beautiful blue and green jewel orbiting an ordinary star. From orbit, it looks peaceful and perfect. But down on the surface, it's a ghost world. Giant cities stand empty, skyscrapers touching clouds that no one sees. Forests have reclaimed highways, and wild animals wander through streets that once held billions of people. Nature has taken everything back. But deep underground, humanity is simply waiting, in enormous cryovaults stretching for hundreds of kilometers beneath every continent. 8 billion people are frozen in time, having slept for nearly 5,000 years, waiting for their automated systems to tell them it's safe to come out. And those systems never stopped working. While humanity slept, their artificial intelligences kept watch over the galaxy. They continued their creators' work, building self-replicating factories, designing weapons beyond anyone's wildest dreams, and just observing. The AIS know all about the Vorax. They've watched the Empire spread like a cancer, logging every invasion, every genocide, every single crime. But their main order was clear. Do not wake the humans until the danger from their own unstable sun has passed. For 5,000 years, the AIs waited. And for 5,000 years, they prepared. Deep inside a command center beneath the Swiss Alps, the master AI, known as Guardian, analyzes new data. The sun had been acting up for millennia, but now, finally, the readings are changing. The solar cycle is stabilizing. Radiation levels are dropping. Guardian runs the numbers 1,000,000 times to be certain. In 6 months, the surface will be safe again. After 4,947 years, it's finally time. Guardian activates the awakening protocol. All over the planet, dormant systems roar to life. Power floods the cryo chambers as medical bots begin the delicate process of reviving 8 billion people. Screens flicker on, ready to download 5 millennia of galactic history directly into their minds. The first to be woken are the military and scientific leaders. They need to understand the new galaxy before everyone else wakes up. Guardian had prepared a detailed file on the Vorax Dominion, a complete history of their reign of terror. The AI couldn't feel emotions, but if it could, it would have felt a cold, calculated satisfaction. Humanity went to sleep as galactic toddlers. They were about to wake up as giants. The Vorax built their empire on the idea that might makes right. It never once occurred to them that something far, far mightier might have just been taking a long nap. In Cryo Chamber Alpha 7, Admiral Sarah Chen's eyes snap open for the first time in nearly 5,000 years. As the frost on her skin shatters, a calm voice begins briefing her through a neural link, telling her everything. She listens without expression, but when the briefing gets to the part about the Vorax and the hundreds of enslaved species, her jaw tightens. By the time she steps out of her pod, her feet steady on the ground, she knows exactly what humanity's first order of business will be. The galaxy had forgotten them. The Vorax thought they were the apex predators. They were about to learn they were just the loudest animals in the jungle right before the real king woke up. The sleeping ones were awake, and they were furious. Admiral Sarah Chen walks down corridors that have been silent for 5 millennia, her breath misting in the cold air. The galaxy she was waking up to was a grim, brutal place. When her people went to sleep, they were just beginning to explore space, meeting friendly new species. Now, those species were all gone, listed as victims of the Vorax Dominion. Sarah pauses, looking through a massive window at the endless rows of cryopods, a silent city of her people. Her responsibility. "Guardian," she says, her voice echoing in the silence, "what's the status of our military personnel?" The AI's calm voice replies from hidden speakers. 12,000, Admiral, all branches accounted for. We are waking an additional 500 specialists every hour." "And the rest of humanity?" Sarah asked. "Phase 2 of the Great Awakening kicks off in 72 hours once the essential infrastructure is 100% stable. We project we can have every last person awake within 6 months." Sarah felt a jolt of shock. 6 months? That was insanely fast, years ahead of their most optimistic projections. Then again, their AI Guardian had been working on this for 5,000 years, perfecting every plan down to the last detail. The AI had evolved into something its creators had never imagined. It wasn't rogue, it wasn't a threat, it was just impossibly competent. Stepping onto the command bridge, she found her top officers already immersed in their work. General Marcus Webb was studying a holographic projection of Earth's new orbital defenses, while Colonel Yuki Tanaka was buried in intelligence files on the Vorax military. Dr. James Okonkwo, the brilliant mind behind the entire Cryo initiative, was analyzing a stream of data from humanity's secret interstellar colonies. "Admiral on deck," an officer called out, and the room went silent as everyone stood. Sarah waved a hand dismissively. "At ease. What's the situation?" General Webb was the first to speak. "Our orbital platforms are fully operational. Guardian didn't just keep them running, it's been upgrading them this whole time." He added with a grim smirk, "Our weapons tech is now roughly 300 years more advanced than anything the Vorax have." "How in the world is that possible?" Sarah asked, turning to the head scientist. Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward, his eyes wide with awe. "Before we all went into cryo-sleep, we gave Guardian a directive to continue our research. We thought we might wake up to a few minor breakthroughs, maybe some new theories. We never, ever expected..." He gestured at the incredible humming technology that surrounded them. The realization hit Sarah like a tidal wave. 5,000 years of non-stop, relentless research and development, all guided by a superintelligence that never slept, never got distracted, and never made a single mistake. The results were something beyond their wildest dreams. "What about our off-world settlements?" she asked, her voice tight with anticipation. "All 12 colony ships arrived at their target systems without any problems." Guardian's calm voice filled the room. "We have established human populations on 7 different worlds across 3 star systems. They are still in cryo-sleep, protected by stealth shielding that makes them completely invisible. Since the Vorax don't have faster-than-light sensor technology, our colonies are undetectable." Sarah exhaled a breath she hadn't even realized she was holding. Humanity didn't just survive. We had been secretly growing, spreading our wings, and taking a giant leap forward while the galaxy thought we were nothing but dust. The Vorax were convinced that Earth was a barren wasteland, its people wiped out by a solar flare thousands of years ago. They were about to get the biggest shock of their lives. But first, Sarah needed to know her enemy. "Guardian, pull up everything you have on the Vorax Dominion," she commanded. "I want to see it all." The star chart in the center of the room shifted, and a sickening blood-red stain spread across a huge chunk of the galaxy, marking Vorax-controlled space. Sarah watched horrific footage from worlds they had conquered. She saw entire civilizations in chains, their histories erased, and billions of people slaughtered by scaly reptilian soldiers. The Vorax didn't just conquer, they relished the cruelty of it all. They had turned the suffering of others into a form of entertainment. A heavy, somber silence filled the command center as the officers took in the horrifying scenes. Some had tears streaming down their faces, others looked on with a cold, simmering rage. "How many species have they driven to extinction?" Colonel Tanaka asked, her voice barely a whisper. 147 confirmed extinctions, Guardian replied flatly. Another 212 species are currently enslaved. The estimated total loss of life over the last 5,000 years is 400 trillion sentient beings. A deep, profound chill settled in Sarah's soul. 400 trillion. The number was so massive it was hard to comprehend, but the reality behind it was terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just a war. It was genocide on a scale the universe had never witnessed. "We cannot allow this to continue," she said, her voice filled with resolve. General Webb nodded grimly. "I'm right there with you. But we have to be smart about this. If we reveal ourselves too soon, before all our people are awake, the Vorax could throw their entire empire at us at once." "Let them," Colonel Tanaka shot back, her eyes flashing. "Guardian's projections indicate we could destroy their whole fleet without a single human casualty." "That's not the point," Sarah countered firmly. "We didn't sleep for 5,000 years just to wake up and become the new bullies of the galaxy. If we just charge in, guns blazing, and do to them what they've done to others, then how are we any different?" The room fell silent again. Everyone knew she was right. Humanity had learned hard lessons from its own violent past, from the endless wars and terrible mistakes that had almost destroyed their home world. This long sleep was meant to be a new beginning, a chance for humanity to be better. "So what's the plan, Admiral?" Dr. Okonkwo asked. Sarah's gaze was locked on the map of the Vorax Empire. "We stop them. We free everyone they've enslaved. We bring the guilty to justice. But we do it our way, without becoming the same kind of monsters. We're going to show the galaxy that true strength lies in compassion." It was a massive undertaking, maybe an impossible one, but it was the only path she was willing to take. "Guardian," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong, "begin preparations. It's time our fleet went out and introduced ourselves to the neighbors." 3 weeks later, the first human starships glided past Earth's defense grid and out into the void of space. They weren't giant, intimidating battleships. Each cruiser had a small crew of just 50 people, but their technology was so advanced that a single one of them could single-handedly defeat an entire Vorax fleet. Captain David Park was in command of the lead ship, the Resurrection. His mission was simple: scout the nearby star systems, try to make peaceful contact with any friendly species, and do not engage the Vorax unless there was no other choice. But of course, the universe rarely cooperates with the plan. "We have a contact," the sensor officer suddenly shouted. "It's a Vorax patrol ship on a course to intercept us." David watched the enemy vessel appear on the main view screen. It was larger than his own ship and bristling with weapons that would have been a terrifying sight 5,000 years ago. Now they just looked old-fashioned. "They're charging their weapons," the officer reported, "and they're hailing us." The scaly face of a Vorax commander appeared on the screen, a face with sharp teeth and yellow eyes that dripped with arrogance. "Unidentified vessel, this is Commander Krath of the mighty Vorax Dominion. You have trespassed in our territory. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." David kept his expression perfectly neutral. "This is Captain David Park of the starship Resurrection, from Earth. We're not here to cause trouble, just passing through." The Vorax commander let out a rasping, ugly laugh. "Earth? That dead world? Do you really expect me to believe that some primitive apes actually survived?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," David replied calmly. "I'm simply telling you the truth. We don't want a conflict. Let us continue on our way, and this can end peacefully." Commander Krath's eyes narrowed into angry slits. "You dare give me commands? Your kind should have stayed extinct. It will be my pleasure to finish what the sun started." The screen went dead. A moment later, the Vorax ship fired a full spread of missiles. David didn't even flinch. The Resurrection's automated defense system tracked the incoming missiles, calculated their trajectories, and deployed countermeasures in less than a second. The missiles exploded in a series of beautiful, silent fireworks far from his ship. "They're firing again," the sensor officer said, his voice completely calm. "All weapon systems." David almost felt a twinge of pity for them. The Vorax were throwing everything they had at his ship, and they weren't even managing to scratch the hull. Their weapons were like trying to stop a tank with a water pistol. "Target their engine block," he ordered. "Disable them, but do not destroy them. I want to take them prisoner." The Resurrection fired only once. A single focused beam of energy shot out and sliced through the Vorax ship's engine room like a surgeon's scalpel. The alien vessel immediately went dark, dead in space. "Their engines and weapons are completely offline," the tactical officer confirmed. "Life support is still active. I'm reading about 60 life signs on board." David nodded. "Prepare the boarding teams. Have the medical crews on standby. The Vorax on that ship are now prisoners of war, and we are going to treat them accordingly." Commander Krath woke up in a brightly lit room that smelled clean, like medicine. He tried to sit up, but his arms were gently held down. A wave of ice-cold panic surged through him. This was it. The humans were going to torture him for information. They would squeeze every last secret from his mind and then toss his broken body aside. It was what the Vorax always did to their prisoners. He braced himself for the pain, but the person who walked into the room was not a torturer. It was a human woman in a white coat holding a medical scanner. Commander Krath, she said, speaking his own language almost perfectly. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. You sustained some minor injuries during the engagement, so I've already treated them. You should be feeling much better. Krath just stared at her, utterly confused. You healed me? Of course, she replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You were injured. We help people who are injured. That's our job as doctors. Nothing was making any sense. Krath had captured thousands of prisoners in his career. He had never once offered any of them medical care. Why would he? They were the enemy, just a tool to be used and then thrown away. What do you want from me? He snarled, expecting the worst. Dr. Vasquez gave him a small, sympathetic smile. Right now, absolutely nothing. Just get some rest, heal, and have something to eat. Someone will come talk to you later, but I give you my word, no one on this ship is going to hurt you. He woke up with a strange feeling, not of pain, but the lack of it. One moment, his ship was being torn apart by a ghost from a dead planet. The next, he was lying on a clean medical bed, his wounds neatly patched. Krath, a proud Vorax warrior, stared at the ceiling, completely baffled. His people would never show mercy to a defeated enemy. It was a sign of weakness. And yet a tiny treasonous thought sparked in his mind. Maybe mercy wasn't weakness at all. Maybe it was a power the Vorax had never understood. Meanwhile, hundreds of light years away, High Commander Vorath sat on his throne, listening to the most ridiculous report of his long life. A patrol ship, crippled near the Forbidden Earth quarantine zone. The attacker? A tiny, impossibly fast ship using weapons that made the mighty Vorax arsenal look like toys. But the part that sent a sliver of ice through his veins was the message they broadcast after the battle. This is Captain David Park of the Earthship Resurrection. Your vessel is disabled. We are taking your crew as prisoners, and they will be treated with dignity. Go tell your leaders that humanity is awake. We don't want a war, but we will not be bullied. Play it again, Vorath growled. The message replayed. The humans spoke his language, Vorax, without a trace of an accent. That meant they'd been listening. For how long? They'd been awake, watching, and preparing, and the all-powerful Vorax Empire never had a clue. How is this possible? He roared, his voice shaking the command deck. Earth is a dead world. We destroyed them. Our own records confirm it. His intelligence officer flinched. High Commander, I've checked the ancient archives. It seems we were wrong. The humans didn't die out. They went underground. They built massive cities deep beneath their world's crust and put themselves into suspended animation. For 5,000 years, High Commander. And during that time, the officer stammered, they never stopped advancing. Our analysis of their weapon signatures suggests their military power is, well, it's significantly greater than ours. Vorath slammed a fist on his throne. Greater than ours? A single tiny ship neutralized a warship in seconds. How many more do they have? What are we dealing with? We don't know, High Commander. We have absolutely no intelligence beyond that one encounter. This was a nightmare. The Vorax Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 5,000 years because they were the strongest. They had never once faced a true challenger. Every other species was primitive, weak, and easily conquered. But these humans, they were different. Vorath made his decision instantly. The Vorax way was simple. When you find a potential threat, you don't study it. You annihilate it. Prepare the Third Fleet, he commanded. 500 warships armed for planetary destruction. I want them at the Earth system in 1 month. A nervous silence fell over the bridge. 500 ships was an overwhelming force, enough to shatter an entire star sector. Using it against a single, long-forgotten planet was insane. But Vorath didn't stay on top by being subtle. If the humans were a real threat, he would crush them with a wave of steel so massive they'd never see it coming. As the old saying went, quantity has a quality all its own. High Commander, an advisor dared to interrupt, perhaps we should open a dialogue. If their power is truly so great, a direct assault could be costly. Vorath's cold reptilian eyes snapped to the advisor. Dialogue? We are the Vorax. We don't talk to insects. We don't show weakness. These humans have challenged our authority. For that, They will be erased from history. He stood and walked to the massive viewport overlooking his capital world. Millions of his kind scurried below, secure in the knowledge that their empire was eternal. He would not be the commander who let that illusion shatter. "Make no mistake," he snarled. "This isn't about one patrol ship. If word gets out that some lost species defied the Dominion and survived, others will get ideas. Our slaves will start hoping for a savior. That cannot happen. The humans must be so completely destroyed that it will be as if they never existed at all." His officers bowed, scrambling to carry out his orders. The largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen was about to descend on a little blue world that dared to fight back. Vorath almost pitied them. To survive for 5,000 years only to be wiped out now. But across the galaxy, in the filthy slave pens of asteroid mines and the hushed back alleys of conquered cities, a rumor was catching fire. A single whisper passed from one soul to another, igniting an impossible hope. The sleepers are awake. Kira, an archivist forced to document Vorax's victories, heard the story. A Vorax ship defeated by a vessel from the dead planet Earth. The crew wasn't executed. They were given medical care. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The forbidden ancient stories she secretly read, could they be true? The sleeping giants were real, and they were finally back. But in the Vorax Dominion, hope was the most dangerous drug of all. People who showed it tended to disappear. So Kira kept her face a perfect, emotionless mask. But inside, a revolution had begun. Could the humans actually free them? Were they strong enough to face the might of the Vorax? Or was this just another false dawn before an even darker night? She wasn't the only one asking. Across the galaxy, billions of enslaved people looked toward the heavens and wondered if, after centuries of suffering, help was finally coming. For the first time in memory, they let themselves dream. Back on Earth, humanity was waking up to a brand new reality. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the Awakening Council. "The civilian reawakening is proceeding ahead of schedule," she reported. "We already have 500 million people out of cryo sleep and briefed on the situation. But we have a problem. The Vorax are sending a fleet, 500 warships. They'll be here in about 3 weeks." A nervous buzz filled the chamber. 500 ships. Even knowing their technology was superior, that number was terrifying. "Can we win?" a representative asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Oh, winning isn't the problem," General Webb replied bluntly. "Our simulations show we could destroy their entire fleet with just 12 of our new destroyers. The real question isn't if we can win, it's how." "What do you mean, how?" another council member asked. "We defend ourselves, obviously." "That's not what I'm saying," Webb clarified. "Protecting Earth is the #1 priority. What I mean is, do we use this as an opportunity to completely decapitate the Vorax military, or do we hold back?" A fierce debate erupted. Some argued for total annihilation. The Vorax were monsters who had enslaved and slaughtered trillions. They deserved no mercy. But others urged caution. They argued that using such overwhelming force, even against tyrants, would make humanity the new monsters of the galaxy. Sarah Chen let them argue for a few minutes before raising her hand for silence. "I understand the rage," she said, her voice calm but firm. "When I read the historical files on what the Vorax have done, I feel it too. But we have to decide who we want to be when the dust settles." She activated a massive holographic map of the galaxy. "There are billions of enslaved beings out there," she said, gesturing to thousands of illuminated star systems. "They're praying that we're their saviors. If our first act on the galactic stage is to commit genocide, what message does that send? That they've just traded one ruthless overlord for another?" The room went quiet. "I propose a different path," she said. "We meet their fleet. We demonstrate without a doubt that they are completely outmatched, but we don't obliterate them. We disable their ships, take their crews prisoner, and offer them a choice. Surrender and face trial for your crimes, or continue to fight, and we will dismantle you piece by painful piece." "Do you really think they'll surrender?" a scientist named Dr. Okonkwo asked. "Honestly, no, I don't," Sarah admitted. "But by offering them the chance, we show the rest of the galaxy that we tried to find a better way. If we simply wipe them out, we prove that we're no different than they are." The council voted. By a narrow margin, Sarah's plan was approved. Humanity would fight with overwhelming power, but it would be guided by mercy. 3 weeks later, the Vorax Third Fleet ripped open reality at the edge of Earth's solar system. 500 warships, a terrifying swarm of dark metal and bristling weapons, blotted out the stars. Fleet Commander Xerath, Vorath's most brutal general, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastation. He had never lost a battle. The human homeworld appeared on his view screen, a tranquil blue and white marble. His sensors counted 8 billion life forms, 8 billion souls about to be extinguished. "Scan for orbital defenses," Xerath barked. "Commander, we're detecting a planetary energy shield of unknown design. It's immense." And the sensor tech hesitated. "There are 12 small vessels moving to intercept." Xerath let out a deep, rumbling laugh. 12? They're sending a dozen ships against 500? "Yes, Commander. Their profiles match the ship that engaged our patrol." "A lucky shot," Xerath sneered. "They caught one ship by surprise. We are the Third Fleet. Nothing in this galaxy can stand against us. Imagine being outnumbered more than 40 to 1. Your tiny ship's facing down a fleet so massive it blocks out the stars. Your entire world, everyone you've ever known is on the line. What would you do? Stick around, because you're about to witness the greatest comeback in galactic history." The broadcast crackled to life, showing an alien commander, all sharp angles and armored scales. "Attention, vessels of Earth. I am Fleet Commander Xerath of the Vorax Dominion. You are outmatched and surrounded. Surrender now, and we may permit some of you to live as our slaves. If you resist, your species will be erased." He gave them 60 seconds. The reply was instant. A human woman, Admiral Sarah Chen, appeared on his view screen looking impossibly calm. "Commander Xerath, this is Earth. We did not ask for this war, but we will not surrender. I strongly suggest you turn your fleet around and go home, because if you attack, you will lose." Xerath's scales flushed dark with rage. "You dare threaten me? You think your 12 little boats can defeat 500 of our mightiest warships?" "That wasn't a threat, Commander," Admiral Chen said, her voice as steady as a rock. "It was a warning. There's a big difference. Please, just take your fleet and leave. No one has to get hurt today." "The only ones dying today are you humans," Xerath bellowed, and slammed the disconnect button. "All ships advance and attack. Scour those vessels from the sky, then bombard the planet until nothing is left but dust." 500 Vorax warships surged forward, their weapon ports glowing with a hungry, destructive light. Aboard her own ship, Admiral Chen watched them come, a profound sadness in her eyes. "They made their choice," she whispered. "Commence defensive patterns. Disable their ships, but do not destroy them. Let's show them what real strength looks like." The 12 human vessels glided forward to meet the oncoming swarm, and the battle that would change the galaxy forever began. From the bridge of his flagship, Commander Xerath could only stare in utter disbelief as his invincible armada was dismantled with the cold precision of a surgeon. The human ships moved with an impossible grace, dancing between his massive warships, their weapons slicing through Vorax shields like they were made of mist. But they weren't killing blows. They weren't even trying to destroy his ships. They were just turning them off. One by one, Vorax destroyers and cruisers simply went dark. Their engines died, their weapons went silent, their communications cut out. But on every single disabled ship, the life support systems were left fully operational. The humans weren't executing his men, they were capturing his entire fleet. "All ships!" Xerath screamed in a panic. "Xerath, focus all fire on their lead vessel. Give them everything you've got." 300 ships that were still functional turned as one, aiming at Admiral Chen's flagship, the Awakening. A torrent of thousands of missiles and energy blasts, bright enough to create a new sun, all raced toward a single point in space. But the Awakening didn't even flinch. It didn't need to. A beautiful, shimmering energy field bloomed around the ship, absorbing every missile and deflecting every beam without effort. The combined firepower of 300 warships might as well have been a light rain shower. And then the awakening responded. It wasn't a weapon blast, but a single, silent pulse of energy that expanded outward. As it washed over his fleet, Xerath felt his own warship lurch violently. Every system on the bridge sparked and died at once. The main lights went out. The gravity generators failed. His crew started to float weightlessly in the pitch-black chaos. A moment later, red emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Xerath clung to a console, his mind refusing to process what had just happened. 500 warships, the pride of the Dominion, had been defeated in just 11 minutes by 12 ships that didn't have a single scratch on them. "Commander," his communications officer stammered, his voice thin with fear, We have an incoming transmission." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the emergency monitor. She looked tired, drained even, but not triumphant. There was only that same deep sadness in her eyes. "Commander Xerath, your fleet has been neutralized. Your ships cannot move, and they cannot fight. We have not harmed your crews, and we won't unless you force our hand. We are sending medical and rescue teams to any ships showing signs of life support failure." Xerath just floated there, speechless. They were sending help? After what he had just tried to do to them? "You are now prisoners of the nation of Earth," Chen continued. "You will be treated with dignity. You will not be harmed. Once the area is secure, you will be given a choice about what comes next." Chen out. The screen went dead. Xerath drifted in the silent ruin of his bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride and certainty. The Vorax were supposed to be the predators of the galaxy, the strongest, the unbeatable, and they had just been brushed aside like a minor nuisance by a species they had written off as insignificant. And that same species had answered their roar of conquest with an act of mercy. 12 hours later, Xerath was sitting in a conference room on the Awakening. His minor wounds had been treated, he'd been given food and water, and his guards were professional, almost polite. They showed none of the casual cruelty he knew his own soldiers would have shown in their place. Admiral Chen entered the room alone. She sat across from him and just looked at him for a moment before speaking. "Commander, there's something you need to see. It won't be easy to watch, but it's important you understand why this happened." She tapped a control, and a holographic projector whirred to life. It displayed the long, bloody history of the Vorax Empire, told not just from their perspective, but from the perspective of their countless victims. Xerath watched as entire civilizations were extinguished. He saw planets stripped bare, their people enslaved by the millions. He heard the recorded screams of those whose only crime was to be in the way of Vorax expansion. He saw children torn from their families, workers beaten to death in mines, entire cultures erased from the galactic record because a commander decided they were inconvenient. He had been one of those commanders. He had given those orders, orders that led to the deaths of billions. At the time it felt right, natural even, the way of the strong. But seeing it all laid out now, unfiltered and raw, he felt a sickening knot twist in his stomach. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It was shame. 400 trillion, Admiral Chen said, her voice soft but heavy. That's the low estimate for how many lives your empire has cost the galaxy. 400 trillion souls, gone simply because the Vorax had the power to take what they wanted. Xerath couldn't meet her eyes. "We are conquerors," he mumbled, the words tasting like ash. "The strong rule the weak. It is the law of the universe." "Is it?" Chen leaned forward. "Humanity has only been back in the galaxy for 2 months. In that time, we disabled your entire fleet without taking a single life on either side. We have the power, right now, to wipe your empire from existence. Every city, every ship, every last Vorax. We could do it, and no one in this galaxy could lift a finger to stop us." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "But we're not going to. Do you want to know why?" Xerath could only shake his head. "Because power without wisdom is just a wildfire, and because destroying you would make us no better than you. Because sometime in the 10,000 years we were gone, we learned that the true measure of strength isn't what you can destroy. It's what you choose to build and protect. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Your people took the galaxy because you were strong. We can take it all back because we're stronger. But this cycle of violence, of strong dominating the weak, it has to stop. It stops today. What do you want from us? Zeroth asked, his voice barely a whisper. A choice, Chen said, turning back to face him. The Vorax Dominion can surrender unconditionally. Your military will be dismantled, your leaders will be tried for their crimes, and every species you've enslaved will be set free. After that, if your people are willing to learn a new way, you will be invited to join a new galactic community, not as conquerors, not as slaves, but as equals. And if we refuse, Zeroth asked, then we will take apart your war machine piece by piece. We will free the enslaved, with or without your consent. Your leaders will be brought to justice regardless. The only real choice you have is how many of your own people have to die before you accept the inevitable. Zeroth sat in silence. The old Vorax warrior inside him screamed for defiance, for a glorious death over this humiliation. But a new voice, one that had been awakened by the images he'd seen, was whispering a different path, a better path. Maybe losing wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was a chance to finally build something better. I can't speak for the entire Dominion, he said, the words feeling heavy. High Commander Vorath will never surrender. He would rather watch our whole species burn to dust. I know, Chen replied calmly. But what about you? What about the soldiers under your command? What about all the regular Vorax citizens who never asked for this war? Zeroth was quiet for what felt like an eternity. Then, he voiced a question that surprised even himself. If we surrender, if we help you end this peacefully, what becomes of us? What becomes of me? You will still face a trial for your actions, she said, her voice unwavering. That part isn't up for debate, but a trial means you get to tell your side of the story, to show that you're sorry, to prove you're a different person now. Execution isn't the only possible outcome. There's a path to redemption. Redemption? The word didn't even exist in the Vorax language. They'd never had a use for it. I need some time to think, Zeroth managed to say. Chen just gave a slight nod and left him alone with his spiraling thoughts. Word of the Battle of Souls rocketed through the galaxy. The Vorax propaganda machine tried to snuff out the story, but they couldn't silence the whispers. In slave quarters and hidden resistance cells, the tale was told again and again. 500 Vorax warships taken down by just 12 human ships, every single crew member captured alive, every prisoner treated with decency. The sleeping giants were awake, and they were everything the old legends had promised. Kira heard the news from her post in the archives and started to weep with pure, unadulterated joy. And she was far from the only one. On 1,000 different worlds, billions of enslaved people looked up at the stars and, for the first time, felt a spark of hope that freedom was finally coming. The Vorax leadership, however, saw things very differently. High Commander Vorath scanned the battle reports, a cold, furious anger building inside him. His most powerful fleet had been completely shamed. His top commander was now a captive. But the worst part of it all was that the humans had shown them mercy. And to him, mercy was a weakness. Mercy was a vulnerability to be exploited. Gather every fleet we have left, Vorath ordered. Every last ship, every soldier, every weapon. These humans think they can beat us with kindness. They are about to find out that the Vorax do not surrender. We do not change. We fight until we win or until we are all dead. His advisors scrambled to follow his orders, though a few of them secretly wondered if their leader had finally snapped. The humans had neutralized 500 ships without even trying. What hope did the rest of their forces have against that kind of power? But not one of them had the courage to say it out loud. Questioning Vorath was a death sentence. The final battle was on the horizon, and the whole galaxy held its breath, waiting to see which idea would triumph, the old way of brutal conquest, or the new way of strength balanced with compassion. The sleepers had made their move. Now it was the Vorax's turn to choose. A year had passed since the Great Awakening, and the galaxy was a completely different place. The Vorax dominion was gone, not blown up in a galaxy-ending war, but carefully dismantled in a series of precise operations that took the Empire apart piece by piece. Human starships would appear in the skies above conquered worlds with a simple, direct message: the slaves were now free. Any Vorax soldier who resisted was quickly disarmed and taken into custody. Those who surrendered their weapons were treated with respect. But High Commander Vorath, consumed by his rage, refused to yield. He pulled together every last ship in his Dominion Navy for one final desperate play, a massive assault on Earth itself. 12,000 warships, the biggest fleet ever seen in the galaxy, ripped through hyperspace, aiming to smash the human defenses with nothing but overwhelming numbers. The fight was over in 23 minutes. The weapon the humans used was something brand new, a secret so well kept that not even the Guardian AI had seen it coming. It didn't blow ships up, it just turned them off. Every single system, from weapons to navigation, even the life support, just went dead. 12,000 massive warships were left floating silently in space, completely powerless. Their crews were stuck, helpless, but very much alive. Vorath himself was captured on the bridge of his own flagship. He had tried to take his own life rather than face the humiliation of surrender. But the humans were faster. Their medics saved him, treated his injuries, and placed him in a cell to await his trial. The trial lasted for 3 long months. Every single atrocity the Vorax had ever committed was brought into the light, documented, and presented as evidence. Survivors from 100 different species came forward to testify, their voices shaking as they described the unimaginable horrors they had endured. Through it all, Vorath just sat there silently, his cold yellow eyes fixed on a spot in the distance that only he could see. In the end, the verdict was guilty. Guilty of crimes against all living things on a scale so massive it was difficult to wrap your head around. But the sentence wasn't death. See, the humans had a policy against executing prisoners, no matter how terrible their crimes. Instead, Vorath was sentenced to spend the rest of his natural life helping to rebuild the very worlds he had torn apart. He would have to work alongside the people he had once enslaved, forced to learn their names, listen to their stories, and finally understand the true cost of his empire. Some said the punishment was too light, others whispered it was the cruelest possible fate. Vorath himself hadn't said a single word since the sentence was read. In the meantime, the planets he once drained were slowly coming back to life. Human aid ships delivered food, medicine, and new technologies to people who had known nothing but suffering for thousands of years. Schools were being built from the rubble, hospitals were opening their doors, and children who had been born in chains were learning that they could dream of being anything they wanted to be. A new galactic council was formed, with a representative from every species that had been freed. The humans were offered a place of honor, a permanent seat, but Admiral Chen politely declined. "We're not here to be your new masters," she explained to the council at their first meeting. "We're just here to lend a hand. The moment you no longer need us, we will step back. This galaxy belongs to all of you." Many species found that hard to swallow. They had lived under the thumb of a tyrant for so long that an act of genuine kindness felt like some kind of trick. But as the months stretched into a year and the humans kept their promise, trust began to slowly grow. The Mallory were among the first to fully welcome this new chapter. Their homeworld was being brought back to its former beauty. Their culture was being celebrated instead of erased. Their children were being taught that they had value just by being themselves, not because of how much work they could do for a master. For the first time in 300 years, the Mallory people could walk freely under their own sun. Kira was no longer just a slave, working away in a forgotten archive. She was now Ambassador Kira, the official representative of the Mallory people on the Galactic Council. It was her relentless digging through those old records that had unearthed the secret that gave humanity the chance to prepare for their awakening. The humans considered her a hero, but she didn't feel like one. She just felt like someone who got really lucky and stumbled upon a little bit of hope in a place where everyone thought hope had died. 1 year after the Great Awakening, Kira took her first trip to Earth. She had been dreaming of this day since she first read about the sleeping ones in that dusty archive. And now, she was actually here, standing on the planet that had changed the entire galaxy. Earth was stunning. It was a world of deep blue oceans, vibrant green forests, and mountains that touched the sky. The humans had cared for their home with a kind of respect the Vorax had never shown for anything. Life thrived here, not because it served some grand purpose, but simply because life itself was seen as precious. Admiral Chen was waiting to meet her personally at the landing pad. The human admiral seemed more tired than she had during the war. You could see the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes. She had spent the last year working around the clock to help put a broken galaxy back together. "Ambassador Kira," Chen said, her smile genuine and warm. "Welcome to Earth." "Admiral Chen," Kira answered, giving a traditional Mallory bow. "I have waited my entire life for this moment." Chen's smile grew wider as she motioned to a vehicle parked nearby. "Then let's not waste any more time. Let me show you why it was all worth the wait." They drove through a countryside that was humming with life. Kira saw children laughing and chasing each other in wide open fields, families sharing meals outside, and entire communities working together to build new things. It was the polar opposite of the Vorax world she had known, where every single structure was built on a foundation of fear. "Can I ask you a personal question, Admiral?" Kira said quietly. "Of course." "Why did you show them mercy? I mean the Vorax, after they had killed trillions. They annihilated 147 species. You had the power to wipe them off the face of the universe forever. So why didn't you?" Kira's question hung in the air, sharp and heavy. If you've ever wondered what real strength looks like, stick with me, because the answer isn't what you think. For a long moment, Commander Chen just stared out the window, a shadow of ancient memories in her eyes. "Because," she said, her voice a low murmur, "a long, long time ago, we were almost them." Kira's head snapped around, her expression a mix of disbelief and shock. Before we went into the long sleep, humanity was a violent, broken species. We fought wars over dirt, over fuel, over ideas. We built bombs that could crack continents and aimed them at our own brothers. We came dangerously close to blowing ourselves to dust more than once, long before we ever learned to touch the stars. Chen's eyes returned to the peaceful landscape outside. When we sealed those cryo vaults, we knew we were facing a choice when we woke up. We could take all our technology and become the new bullies of the galaxy, just like the Vorax. Or we could use it to protect, to heal, to give everyone else the second chance that we nearly threw away. She finally turned to look Kira in the eye. The Vorax aren't some cosmic evil. They're just what happens when a species gets powerful before it gets wise. They never learned the difference between having strength and being cruel. We could have erased them and called it justice. But if we'd done that, we would have just proven their point, that the only way to survive is to be the most brutal one in the room. We would have become the monster they saw in the mirror. "So, you picked another path," Kira said softly. "We picked the harder path," Chen corrected her gently. "It's easy to break things. Any thug with a big enough hammer can do that. But to build something better, to offer forgiveness to those who don't seem to deserve it, to show the entire galaxy that power can be used for peace instead of war, now that takes real strength." Kira let the words wash over her. She pictured Commander Zeroth, the Vorax leader who had surrendered his entire fleet and then spoke out against his own high command. She thought about the Vorax prisoners of war who were slowly, painfully, learning that life wasn't just about conquering or being conquered. and she thought of the whole galaxy, finally starting to heal from wounds that had been left to fester for 5,000 years. "I think I'm starting to get it," she said. Their shuttle settled on a gentle hill overlooking a sparkling ocean right in front of a memorial. Rows of stone pillars reached for the sky, each one carved with the name of a species the Vorax had hunted to extinction. 147 pillars for 147 cultures, silenced forever. But right next to all that stone and sorrow, there was a garden. And in that garden, living plants from every single surviving world in the galaxy grew together. It was a chaotic, beautiful explosion of different colors, shapes, and scents all mixed into one. It was a living symbol that life finds a way, that it refuses to be stamped out. "We built this as a reminder," Chen said quietly. "Not just of what we lost, but to cherish what we managed to save. Every species that's still here has a spot in this garden, including the Mallory." Kira walked through the vibrant flowers until she found the familiar silver-leafed blossoms from her homeworld. She knelt, her fingers gently tracing the soft petals as tears streamed down her silver cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for waking up." Chen stood beside her as the setting sun painted the sky in fiery shades of orange and gold. "We were asleep for 5,000 years, she said softly, "and when we opened our eyes, we found a galaxy in chains. We could have ignored it. We could have locked the doors to Earth and let the darkness win, but that's not who we decided to be." She helped Kira to her feet. "The sleeping giants are awake now, and we're not going back to sleep until every last soul in this galaxy is free." Hundreds of light years away, on a planet being reclaimed from a Vorax mining operation, a former slave named Jeff watched his kids playing with human children in a field of wildflowers. The humans had arrived 6 months ago to help them rebuild their town. They didn't just bring food, medicine, and tools. They brought something else, something Jeff thought he'd never feel again. Hope. Jeff's little girl came running over, her small hand clutching a flower she'd just picked. "Daddy, look! The human kids told me its name. It's called a rose." He took the flower from her, amazed by its delicate petals. It was so beautiful, so fragile, the kind of thing a Vorax would have crushed under his boot without a second glance. "It's perfect, sweetie," he said. "We should plant some in our garden." His daughter beamed and ran back to her new friends. Jeff watched her go, a warmth spreading through his chest that he thought had died long ago. In the distance, a human ship lifted off, heading for another world that needed a helping hand. The sleeping ones were always moving, always building, always proving there was a better way. They had the power to be emperors. They could have forced everyone to bow down to them, but instead they chose to be gardeners and healers and friends. Jeff looked up at the night sky, at the same stars that once represented his prison. Now, they were a map of endless possibilities. The Vorax had held the galaxy in a death grip for 5,000 years. They believed that strength was cruelty, that power was domination, and that you either conquered or were conquered. They were wrong. The sleeping ones had awoken, and they taught the universe a simple, powerful truth. Real strength isn't measured by the things you can destroy, but by the things you can help grow. We learned that true power wasn't in what you could take by force, but in what you chose to build and protect. Across the stars, a great healing had begun. It would take generations, maybe even centuries, to erase the horrific scars the Vorax had left behind. But for the first time in 5,000 years, that healing was finally possible. Because somewhere out in the darkness, humanity was on watch. Humanity was lending a hand. Humanity was ready, and they were never, ever looking away again. Model Cell.